Mom and
come
Ketchy
and
stood in her
eat.
small kitchen, wiping sweat from her forehead.
This heat will finish
The
us.
evening heat pressed against the walls of their compound like a thick blanket. She had just finished cooking jollof rice and chicken stew, enough to last 2 days. "Nkem, come and eat," she called to her daughter. 9-year-old Nkem appeared, her school uniform still on, her face tired from the day's lessons. They ate together in comfortable silence. When they finished, half the pot of rice remained. Mom and Ketchy covered it with a lid and carried it outside to the corridor. This was what everyone did. The compound was too hot inside. Food spoiled faster in the heat. Leaving it outside to cool overnight made sense. By morning, the night air would have preserved it perfectly. Neighbors passed by, doing the same thing. Pots lined the corridor like sleeping guards. Mama Ejiro from upstairs laughed, balancing 3 containers. "This heat will finish us," she joked. Mom and Ketchy smiled. Everything felt normal. Safe. Routine. She locked her door, kissed Nkem goodnight, and climbed into bed. But long after midnight, when the compound was silent and dark, a soft shuffling sound echoed through the corridor. The next morning, Mom and Ketchy brought the pot inside and reheated the rice. The smell was fine. The color looked right. She served Nkem a generous portion before school. "Eat well, my dear. You need strength for your lessons." Nkem ate obediently, though she chewed slowly. Halfway through the meal, she pushed the plate away gently. "Mama, my stomach hurts a little." Mom and Ketchy felt a small prick of concern, but dismissed it quickly. "It's just stress from school. Or maybe the heat. Drink water." Nkem drank and went to school. The pain wasn't severe, just uncomfortable, a dull ache that came and went. That evening, Mom and Ketchy cooked fresh soup. Nkem ate better and seemed fine. By bedtime, the discomfort had faded. "See?" Mom and Ketchy said, tucking her daughter in. It was nothing. But late that night, Nkem woke suddenly. Her eyes were open, staring at the ceiling. "Mama," she whispered into the darkness. Mom and Ketchy stirred. "What is it?" "The food this morning. It tasted wrong." Mom and Ketchy frowned. "How can food taste wrong? You ate it all." Nkem was quiet for a long moment. "It tasted like someone else touched it." The next day, Mom and Ketchy told herself she was being foolish. Children had wild imaginations. Nkem probably had a bad dream. She looked around the compound that evening. Every single household did the same thing. Pots everywhere. Covered plates. Bowls of leftover soup. This was normal. It had always been normal. Mama Ejiro passed by again. "You leaving yours out tonight?" "Of course," Mom and Ketchy said. "Good. My mother did this. Her mother did this. We are still alive, are we not?" Mom and Ketchy laughed, feeling reassured. If entire generations survived this way, what was there to fear? An elderly woman from the ground floor, Mama Adana, walked past slowly. She glanced at the pots and said quietly, almost to herself, "Just make sure it's outside before dark. Not after." Mom and Ketchy blinked. "What do you mean?" But Mama Adana had already shuffled away, her wrapper trailing behind her. Mom and Ketchy stood there, confused. Before dark? What difference did timing make? The phrase stuck in her mind like a thorn. That night, instead of sleeping immediately, she lay awake, listening. Mom and Ketchy couldn't explain why, but she felt restless. The corridor outside her door was silent, but the silence felt full. Heavy. She rose quietly, careful not to wake Nkem, and crept to the door. She pressed her ear against it. Footsteps. Soft. Deliberate. Someone was walking through the corridor, but slowly, as though inspecting each doorway. Mom and Ketchy's heart beat faster. Who would be walking at this hour? She opened the door just a crack and peeked out. The corridor was dark. Dim moonlight filtered through the windows at both ends. She saw nothing at first. Then, a shadow moved near the far end. It was the compound caretaker, Uncle Festus. He was sweeping, as he often did, but his movements were strange. Slow. Methodical. He paused at each pot, leaning down as if listening. Mama Nkechi frowned. Why was he cleaning at midnight? She watched him for a few more seconds, then quietly closed the door. The next morning, she retrieved her pot. The food smelled fine. But when she lifted the lid, she noticed something odd. The lid had been slightly shifted. Not much. Just enough. She stared at it, unease curling in her stomach. Mama Nkechi brought the pot inside and examined the rice carefully. It looked normal. White grains, orange from the tomato stew, flecks of green pepper. She smelled it. Almost normal. But there was something underneath the familiar scent. Something neutral. Too clean. Like the smell had been covered. She touched the edge of the pot. A thin, oily residue clung to her fingers. She rubbed it between her thumb and forefinger, frowning. Then she noticed something stranger. Flies buzzed around the kitchen, but they avoided the pot completely. They circled it, landed near it, but never touched the food itself. Mama Nkechi's stomach tightened. She called Nkem for breakfast, but when her daughter saw the rice, she shook her head firmly. I don't want it, Mama. Why not? It's the same rice from yesterday. Nkem's voice was quiet but sure. Someone touched it. Mama Nkechi wanted to scold her, to say she was being ridiculous. But she couldn't. Because deep down, she felt it too. She poured the entire pot into the trash, her hands trembling slightly. She told no one. That evening, Mama Nkechi cooked fresh food and kept it inside, despite the heat. She didn't put anything outside. But the decision felt wrong. Heavy. Like she was breaking an unspoken rule. She realized something frightening. The safety she had felt all this time wasn't based on proof. It was based on assumption. On everyone else doing the same thing. She had trusted the routine. Trusted the neighbors. Trusted that because nothing bad had happened before, nothing bad would happen now. But that comfort was built on sand. She thought about all the times she had confidently placed food outside, never questioning it. Never checking. Never worrying. That confidence now felt like foolishness. The food outside had never been safe. She had just been lucky. Or had she? Nkem's stomach problems. The unexplained aches. The doctor visits that found nothing. The nights she cried from cramps. Mama Nkechi's chest tightened painfully. What if it wasn't luck? What if something had been happening all along, and she just hadn't seen it? She looked at her daughter, sleeping peacefully now. Guilt settled over her like a shroud. Mama Nkechi began watching. Not obviously. Just quietly observing. She noticed patterns. Certain pots were always emptier in the morning. Not drastically, just slightly less than what had been left the night before. Certain nights, Uncle Festus swept the corridor more thoroughly. Those were the nights when more food seemed to vanish. And he was always awake. Always present. Always helping. One night, unable to sleep, she positioned herself near the door again. She waited, listening in the dark. At exactly midnight, she heard it. Footsteps. The soft scrape of a pot lid being lifted. She cracked the door open, just enough to see. Uncle Festus stood in the corridor. He reached down and lifted a pot that belonged to Mama Ejiro upstairs. He opened the lid, peered inside, and whispered something. Mama Nkechi couldn't hear the words. But she saw his lips move. Then he replaced the lid carefully and moved to the next pot. Her pot was still inside her room. He paused at her door, staring at the empty spot where her food should have been. Then he moved on. Mama Nkechi closed the door silently, her heart pounding in her ears. Later that week, alone in her kitchen, Mama Nkechi allowed herself to remember why she had started leaving food outside in the first place. It wasn't tradition. It was survival. Years ago, when Kim's father left, money became tight. Electricity was expensive. Cooking twice a day wasted gas. She couldn't afford waste. So she adopted the habit everyone else used: cook once, preserve overnight, eat again the next day. It saved time. It saved money. It made life manageable. But somewhere along the way, convenience became routine. Routine became carelessness. Carelessness became neglect. She had stopped thinking about what she was doing. She just did it. And Kim had paid the price. Tears filled Mama Nkechi's eyes. She covered her face with her hands. She had failed her daughter. Not through cruelty, but through thoughtlessness. That night, Kim's stomach pain returned. Worse than before. She cried softly, clutching her belly. "Mama, it hurts." Mama Nkechi held her close, whispering apologies her daughter couldn't understand. The next morning, she took Kim to the clinic again. The doctor examined her, ran tests, found nothing. "Sensitive stomach," he said, as always. But Mama Nkechi knew better now. The medicine did nothing. Kim's pain continued. Some nights she slept well. Other nights, she woke crying. Mama Nkechi noticed something disturbing. The pain was worse on mornings after she had briefly considered leaving food outside just this once. Even when she didn't actually do it, the thought alone seemed to trigger something. One night, Kim muttered in her sleep. "Stop sharing my food." Mama Nkechi froze, listening. "Mama, tell them to stop sharing." "Sharing? With who?" Then, 2 weeks later, something happened that made Mama Nkechi's blood run cold. Mama Ejiro's youngest son, a healthy boy of 7, fell violently ill. Vomiting. Fever. Stomach cramps so severe he screamed. The hospital found nothing. But the boy's condition worsened. Mama Ejiro, desperate, asked the compound if anyone else's child had similar symptoms. Mama Nkechi said nothing. But she knew. She knew exactly what had caused it. And the weight of that knowledge crushed her. Because she could warn them. She could tell them to stop. But would they believe her? Or would they laugh, the way she once would have laughed? One night, Mama Nkechi sat alone on the floor of her kitchen, staring at nothing. The compound was silent. Kim was asleep. The world outside her window was dark. No one had accused her of anything. But she accused herself. She thought about every time she had dismissed Kim's pain. Every time she had reheated food without thinking. Every time she had trusted what everyone else did, instead of thinking for herself. The danger wasn't ignorance. Ignorance could be forgiven. The danger was choice. Repeated choice. She had chosen convenience over caution. Routine over vigilance. Comfort over her daughter's safety. And that choice had consequences. Silent tears ran down her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered into the empty room. "I'm so sorry." When the sun rose, Mama Nkechi made a decision. That night, she would stay awake. All night. She would watch. She would see exactly what happened to the food left outside. And she would never ignore the truth again. No matter how frightening it was. That evening, Mama Nkechi cooked as usual. But when the food cooled, she brought everything inside. Every pot. Every bowl. Every container. The kitchen became unbearably hot. The food would spoil faster this way. Cooking would be harder. But she didn't care. Mama Ejiro saw her carrying food inside and laughed. "Sister Nkechi, you will cook twice tomorrow because of this heat." "I know," Mama Nkechi said simply. Later that night, Uncle Festus knocked on her door. Mom and Ketchy, I noticed you didn't leave your food outside. She opened the door slightly. Yes, Uncle. I'm keeping it inside now. His smile was friendly. But his eyes were not. That's not wise. Food spoils in this heat. You are breaking the harmony of the compound. Harmony. The word felt wrong in his mouth. I will manage, she said. He nodded slowly. If you insist. But I can help keep your food safe. Just leave it outside. I will watch over it personally. Mom and Ketchy's skin prickled. No, thank you, Uncle. I prefer to keep it inside. His smile faded. As you wish. He walked away slowly, glancing back once. That night, Kim slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. The next few days were difficult. Food spoiled. Flies invaded the kitchen. Mom and Ketchy had to cook more often, using more gas, spending more money she didn't have. But Kim's stomach improved. Slowly. Surely. The neighbors noticed. They stopped greeting Mom and Ketchy warmly. Conversations became shorter. Colder. Mama Ejiro stopped visiting. Mama Adana avoided her eyes. Uncle Festus grew distant. He swept the corridor less often. When he did, he glared at Mom and Ketchy's door. One afternoon, Mom and Ketchy overheard a conversation between two neighbors in the corridor. She thinks she's better than us, one whispered. She's disrupting things. Making people uncomfortable. If she doesn't like how we live, she should leave. Mom and Ketchy pressed her back against the door, heart pounding. Why did keeping her food inside anger them so much? What was she disrupting? One night, she woke to a sound. A scraping noise. She turned on the light and gasped. Her cooking pot, which she had left sealed inside her kitchen, had been moved. Just slightly. As though someone had tried to open it. But her door was locked. Her windows were shut. How? Despite the hostility, despite the hardship, Kim improved. Her energy returned. Her laughter came back. Her stomach pain disappeared almost completely. Mom and Ketchy watched her daughter play one afternoon, running with other children, and felt a surge of relief so powerful it brought tears to her eyes. She was right. She knew she was right. Keeping the food inside had saved her daughter. But the question remained, why did everyone else resist so fiercely? Why did they defend a habit that clearly caused harm? One evening, as Mom and Ketchy fetched water from the compound tap, Mama Adana appeared beside her. The old woman glanced around to make sure no one was listening. Then she leaned close. You are wise to keep your food inside, she whispered. Mom and Ketchy turned, surprised. Then why doesn't anyone else? Mama Adana's eyes were sad. Because they don't want to know the truth. It's easier to pretend nothing is wrong. But why does Uncle Festus care so much? The old woman hesitated. Then she said quietly, after dark, food left outside is considered communal. Communal? For who? Mama Adana didn't answer. She simply said, and when someone stops feeding the night notices. Then she walked away, leaving Mom and Ketchy standing alone, chilled to the bone. Strange things began happening. Small things. Disturbing things. Knocks on the door at odd hours. When Mom and Ketchy opened it, no one was there. Items went missing from her kitchen. A spoon. A cup. A small plate. Nothing valuable, but the intrusion was clear. Food she had sealed tightly would be spoiled by morning, even though it was stored properly. And Uncle Festus watched her door constantly. She would see him standing in the corridor at night, just watching. Kim began having nightmares. She would wake crying, saying she heard whispers outside the window. They're angry, Mama, she said one night, her small body trembling. Who is angry, my love? The ones we stopped feeding. Mom and Ketchy's blood turned to ice. Kim was 9 years old. She shouldn't know things like this. She shouldn't sense things adults pretended not to see. But children saw clearly. They hadn't learned to ignore the truth yet. Why are they angry we stopped feeding them? Kim asked, her eyes wide and frightened. Mom and Ketchy held her daughter close. Because some things survive only when we keep feeding them, she whispered. And when we stop, they try to make us afraid. So we'll start again. Will you start again, Mama? Never. Mom and Ketchy couldn't take it anymore. She confronted Uncle Festus one evening as he swept the corridor. Uncle, why do you care so much about where I keep my food? He stopped sweeping and looked at her calmly. I don't care, Mom and Ketchy. I only care about the compound's peace. What peace? My daughter is healthier now than she's been in months. Good for her. But what about everyone else? What do you mean? Uncle Festus leaned on his broom. Everyone eats. Everyone benefits. When one person breaks the pattern, it causes imbalance. Imbalance of what? He didn't answer. He just smiled faintly. You're a smart woman. You'll figure it out. Are you threatening me? No, Mama. I'm warning you. Refusal has consequences. Mom and Ketchy stepped closer. What do you do with the food at night? Uncle Festus's smile faded. His eyes went cold. I keep the compound safe. By doing what? He didn't answer. He simply turned and walked away. That night, Mom and Ketchy couldn't sleep. At midnight, she heard movement outside. She crept to the window and looked out into the corridor. Uncle Festus was there. And he was performing a quiet ritual with leftover food. Through the crack in her curtain, Mom and Ketchy watched in horror. Uncle Festus knelt beside 3 pots left outside by different neighbors. He opened each lid carefully, whispered something over the food, and then sprinkled something from a small pouch into each pot. Ash? Or powder? She couldn't tell. He closed the lids, placed his hands flat on top of each pot, and muttered words in a language she didn't recognize. When he finished, he stood, brushed off his knees, and walked away silently. Mom and Ketchy's heart pounded so hard she thought it would burst. The food wasn't just being tampered with. It was being offered. She finally understood. The food left outside after dark wasn't carelessness. It wasn't tradition. It was intentional. It was an offering. To something unseen. Something that demanded to be fed. And Uncle Festus wasn't just the caretaker of the compound. He was the caretaker of the feeding. The next morning, she pulled Nkem close. We're leaving this compound. Nkem's eyes went wide. Where will we go, Mama? Anywhere but here. But that afternoon, Uncle Festus appeared at her door. His face was calm, but his words were clear. If you leave, Mom and Ketchy, the debt follows you. The only way out is to keep feeding. Or to never stop running. Mom and Ketchy didn't sleep that night. She sat in the dark, thinking. She finally understood the full picture. The compound had an unspoken agreement. Food left outside after dark wasn't just cooling. It was tribute. Payment. Appeasement. For what? She didn't know. Spirits. Ancestors. Something older. Something that had made a bargain long ago with the people who lived here. And Uncle Festus maintained that bargain. He collected the food. He whispered the words. He kept the peace. And in return, the compound remained safe. But safety built on fear wasn't safety. It was slavery. Her daughter had been sick because she was sensitive. She could feel what others ignored. Her body rejected the food that had been touched, blessed, offered to things that should not be fed. Mom and Ketchy realized something else. The neighbors weren't ignorant. They knew. Deep down, they all knew. But they chose to look away. Because looking meant acting. And acting meant leaving. And leaving meant hardship. So they stayed. And they fed the night. And they told themselves it was normal. Mom and Ketchy refused to be like them. Even if it cost her everything. 3 weeks later, Mom and Ketchy and Kem moved to a smaller, cheaper room across town. The new place was far from the old compound. No communal corridors. No shared routines. No Uncle Festus. Life was harder. Rent was higher. Money was tighter. But Kem was healthy. Truly healthy. Her stomach pain never returned. Years passed. Kem grew into a strong, bright young woman. She went to school. She laughed freely. She never once fell the way she used to. One evening, when Kem was 16, Mom and Ketchy taught her to cook. As the sun began to set, Kem reached for a pot to set outside to cool. Mom and Ketchy's hand shot out, stopping her. "Never," she said firmly. "Never leave food outside after dark." Kem looked at her mother, seeing the old fear flash in her eyes. "Why, Mama?" Mom and Ketchy held her daughter's hands. "Because not every danger announces itself. Some things survive only because we keep feeding them. Out of habit. Out of fear. Out of ignorance." She lifted the pot and placed it inside, closing the door firmly behind them. The night can eat elsewhere. And the cycle, finally, ended.